Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, episode 89, featuring Margaret Rosenfeld, Chief Legal Officer of Cube.Exchange, which is an innovative new crypto exchange looking at handling custody a little bit differently. Welcome, Margaret. How are you doing?
Doing great. Just put the phone on, don't bother me for an hour.
Nice. I like it. I like it. Very cool that you're joining us from Miami. I had the pleasure of meeting you in person while I was down there for Art Basel, and it just sounded like a very innovative, exciting kind of platform that your team is building out there at Cube. So I really look forward to kind of picking your brain about what you're doing differently and how you feel about kind of the regulatory environment really in crypto in general. And I know as a legal expert, I think you can probably share some insights that we haven't been able to get from other guests on the show. So really excited about that. I want to welcome everyone back to Web3 Warriors. This is actually the starting of season 5, episode 89. Really grateful to all of our listeners and supporters as we continue to have conversations about Web3 and the blockchain and the creator economy that's being built on the blockchain, and really the real power of the technology, right? Being in peer-to-peer opportunities and really making the world a bit smaller and making it easier to transact and to support people around the globe, and also to engage in real economic activity in the digital world. So welcome again to Web3 Warriors. I'm your host, David Krome. I go by Krome in the Metaverse. And like I said, we're now on season 5 of these really great thought-provoking conversations with artists, developers, creators, really just innovators on the blockchain and in the space. And really looking forward to what the new season holds and also the new year in 2024. We've seen a lot happening in the crypto space already, a lot of promises of big things to happen, big things to come, including a supposed Bitcoin ETF around the corner. We'll see. We're going to ask Margaret about that a little bit. But the real topic of the episode today is looking at crypto exchanges in general, right? And we hear a lot of conversation in the space about the concept of if it's not your keys, then it's not your crypto, right? So if you don't have the secret passphrase to your crypto wallet, then you don't actually own that crypto, right? So when you have crypto in an exchange, for example, whether it's Coinbase, whether it's crypto.com, whether it's Cube, although I think Cube's doing it a little differently, so we're going to hear about that from Margaret. But ultimately, the argument is, it's not necessarily safe there because you don't have it in your own sovereign wallet with your own passphrase protecting it, right? And so often people will say either just go the straight peer-to-peer route and trade crypto with other crypto enthusiasts and get your crypto that way instead of going to an exchange, or if you have to go to an exchange to get your crypto, move it off of exchange as quickly as possible into your own sovereign wallet, right? So that's kind of the narrative around it. But how fair is that narrative? And ultimately, when looking at quote unquote mass adoption, which is a phrase we don't love around here, but also just the idea that crypto has to grow, right? And we want to see crypto grow. We want to see more expansion of use cases and more accessibility to crypto. And I think that, or we know that exchanges are going to play a very important role in kind of increasing accessibility to crypto. So some might call it a necessary evil. I think that innovations continue to play in the right direction, and so I think that exchanges are going to be there for the foreseeable future. And it's just interesting to see kind of how they are trying to balance that approach. And a lot of them have actually created their own blockchains or their own layer 2 coins on top of Ethereum or something. So it's kind of a lot of different angles that are being taken by different crypto exchanges. So with that, I won't go into too much detail. I really look forward to hearing from Margaret and hearing about how things might be changing in the industry. So before we really dive into Cube and everything you're working on there, Margaret, maybe you could share a little bit of background about yourself, what brought you to Web3. I know you have a legal background. So thanks again for joining, and please share a little bit about, what brought you to Web3 and how you got so interested in blockchain.
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me on, and I love the artwork behind you. Very cool. I think it's appropriate that we met at Art Basel. I live in Miami, as you know, and have been here and watched the birth of the NFT movement in crypto, which really had a stronghold in Miami at the beginning, if you think about that. So enjoyed meeting you at Art Basel and also seeing everything that's going on and coming for 2024 in the NFT space. In terms of how did I end up in crypto? It's really more how I ended up in technology, I think is the better question. And so I started out as a lawyer before there was a Web 1. I started as a lawyer in 1997. And so I always tell folks, my first email was day one in 1997 as a lawyer, the first email I had, but there were no cell phones. There was no texting. And from 1997 to 2001, I worked outside the United States as well. So I'm a US qualified lawyer, but I started in Tokyo. So my view towards technology and technology expansion has always been a global one as well, which I think probably was essential to bringing me into Web3 when it came about. And so I spent 97 to 2001, and if you're in the know, 2001 is when the bubble burst on the internet.
.com bubble, right?
It was a winter, right? We use the term winter now, but boy, that was a winter, and fast. And very similar from a technology perspective, over the years, I developed a theory of how new disruptive technologies come into our society. And I call that theory fringe, frontier, familiar. So we move from fringe. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Fringe has a lot of great ideas. Fringe sometimes also has ideas that are way ahead of what the technology can do, or way ahead of all the other supporting infrastructure that the technology needs. And sometimes also the societal adoption as well. So that's the fringe stage. And then you go to the frontier stage. And at the frontier stage, you start to see large institutionals come in. You start to see banking pay attention to it. You start to see regulators pay attention to it. Guess where we are right now?
Frontier.
Yeah, frontier. And then there's the familiar stage. So I'm going to just take cloud computing through this. When cloud computing first came out, I can recall sitting around with like 20 people. I was living in London at the time, and just talking the way we talk about blockchain, like it could do this, it could do that. And some of these ideas just seemed insane to me. Now they seem very familiar, right? They came about. And also in the fringe and frontier stage, people really want to understand the technology deeply. So you have to spend a lot of time explaining, how does this work? Why you don't have to be afraid of it. So I was working on IPOs from 97 to 2001 until the bubble burst. And in those disclosure documents, when you have to describe this new technology, descriptions of SaaS, we moved from premises-based technology to SaaS-based. Well, now we have a mixture of both. You're always going to have a mixture of technologies, but there was that big movement happening. The disclosure on what cloud-based or SaaS technology was, I had to write 10 pages about it because people had to understand it in order to get into that adoption of it.
I always thought that the whole concept of cloud-based computing, like just call it a server, it just sounded like it just mystified everything and made it so convoluted. It's like, it's a server out somewhere. It's not that complicated.
I can remember working with clients who were trying to get large enterprises to adopt cloud technology and looking at their marketing materials and what they ran into all the time is people think I'm not going to put my crown jewels in this cloud. Right. What are you talking about? Now everybody has their crown jewels in that.
You can't escape the cloud. There's no escaping the cloud.
No, you can't escape the cloud. So you see this transition that occurs, and all of the struggles that we're going through with Web3 in that adoption that people get so frustrated about in our industry. You can look at these analogies and say, okay, this is just how society adopts technology. There's going to be questioning of it. And it's our job for people who are in the industry. I think the job of the early adopters who've been in for a while is to spend the time explaining it. I have a red solo cup explanation of how, I call it red solo cup because I did it in Thanksgiving 2015. I first had my first client in crypto as a lawyer in 2015. Nice. And so I had to learn about it. And so Thanksgiving, I'm home for Thanksgiving. It's Friday after Thanksgiving. I'm sitting on the deck with my high school friends. And, you're starting to see things about Bitcoin in the news. And they asked me what I was doing. I was like, well, I'm working on this blockchain stuff. And they said, what is that? I'm like, well, you've heard of Bitcoin. And they're like, oh, shady. Come on, what are you thinking? Risky. So I took the red Solo cups that you drink out of in the United States. I know you're in Canada, right?
Yeah, we still use red Solo cups too.
I don't know. They're not a global thing. So
Right.
for global listeners, these plastic cups called red Solo cups. There's a famous country song called Red Solo Cup about it. So go Google it. If you're from the South, you know that song in the United States. But so we're sitting around and we're drinking out of these red Solo cups, and there's a bunch of empties. And I said, so well, let me explain how a wire transaction works currently and how many intermediaries are involved, and then let me explain how a Bitcoin transaction works. And so it just basically involved like 20 Solo cups to 2 Solo cups, right?
Nice.
Kind of thing. And so but that's our responsibility, coming up with ways for people to think about this. If they have to go and Google and read, and they have to read things like decentralized, right? Or consensus.
Right.
What is consensus? What is a block? Like all of these things. So we have to educate about it. So I've been doing that since 97 as a tech lawyer, lived through Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, working with companies globally, a lot of, focus on corporate. I'm a securities nerd at heart, so I can dive down there. Worked on issues with exchanges from day one in Tokyo. I worked on the Sumitomo copper trading issue in Japan at the time, which people around long enough know that. So I've been involved with all kinds of exchange work. And so this convergence for me of the fintech industry, crypto, everything coming together, it just makes it's as if God said to me, hey, you're meant to be working at a crypto exchange right now, and this is everything you've been building to it.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. That's really cool. Thank you for that background. Wow, it sounds like you've had quite the journey and a good body of knowledge to bring you to the forefront. And even having gone through the .com bubble, we hear a lot of comparisons to that when looking at, especially NFTs specifically, because I think that's one where we're going to wait and see. I think the Bitcoin and Ethereum waves, I think everyone kind of understands they're volatile, but they're going to be here for the long run, right? But when they're looking at NFTs, there are a lot of people who think maybe they've kind of had the .com bubble type of situation where the mysticism and the real kind of crazy amount of hype and FOMO is gone and may never come back. As someone who's been through the .com bubble, do you think that's the case, or do you think that NFTs will be more like crypto where they do get volatile and they actually do come back and kind of go back and forth?
I spend a lot of time listening to Twitter Spaces related to NFTs because I want to see how NFT projects are going to evolve themselves, because they will, and they are. I think the strong communities out there that exist are thinking about that. You see that with, you see a penguin behind me, so like a lot of
you got your pudgy penguin there.
Yeah, so a lot. I think we look at like pudgy penguins, and they're thinking about doing things very differently there. They have their NFTs, but getting on Amazon during Amazon Prime Day this summer. That was smart. Doing the soulbound NFTs when you get one of these off of them, they have a soulbound NFT, a platform you can go to. It's an entryway into learning about how crypto works, and that's an entryway to their community. Maybe somebody gets all of that, and maybe then they buy an NFT. Their placement with Walmart, brilliant, some stuff there. So I see DeGods is really doing some things differently with their governance. They're moving things around on that. I don't know if their vote has come through on who is the president, but
I haven't been following it closely. They seem to be doing a lot, and they moved right from like Solana to Polygon, and they go back to Solana. I don't know.
Yeah. So I think the collections that are focusing on what I call social game theory, I don't call it that. It's called social game theory, right? I did not create that. If you've ever seen the movie The Beautiful Mind, which is a very famous movie, and I told you Krome, I would not remember the name of anyone when I was on here. I never can remember names when I'm talking live. But there's a scientist, he was at Princeton, he came up with this concept of social game theory. It's a mathematical theory. And it's the concept of using algorithms, using concepts in technology and in math that will gamify different experiences to make a community, make things sticky. Flash forward, you look at James Young and Farmville app. James Young runs Collabland now. So he is
interesting, and he's the same one who made Farmland.
Farmville app was Farmville was the first that I know of. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was one of the first. I don't want to say the first, but that used the concept of a social game theory in an app game, right? And so you were interacting with other people. There was a community created, leaderboards, all of those things. Right. And that now those communities have to be transparent and genuine. Right, the people who lead them have to be like that. So that's really important. Right. So James Young, if by the way, just go watch some videos of him. I will, full disclosure, when I was at a law firm, Collabland was one of my clients, but I met James Young early on. I met James back in 2017 when he was the CTO of like 4 different projects, and in all of them he was applying this theory. And we got on the phone and he mentioned it, and I said, oh my God, we talk about this theory with e-commerce technology. So this is not a new application of the concept, but he was applying it and people began applying it. We really saw this applied in the NFT collection and project wave. But I think what projects have to be careful about is being genuine, not being shillers, right? Not no rugs, all that stuff. That's what the trend we need to see for them to survive.
So to answer the question, you're thinking the real projects are along for the long haul, and they'll probably benefit from the waves of crypto kind of volatility, you think? Because when you look at like the floor prices, for example, of a lot of these collections that you've mentioned where they were quite astronomical and they've come down, maybe 80% or something. Do you think that, with if things swing back the other way and the crypto markets go back into bull market, does NFT land kind of do the same,
I definitely think
Depends
you're going
on the project, right?
Yeah, no, I definitely think you're going to see that. I think, the hard thing with NFTs is I challenged myself over Christmas, like my kids were home and we had this challenge. I said, come up with an NFT idea, just like a concept of maybe it's like worms, right? Or whatever it is. Come up with an idea that doesn't exist already. And by the way, worms does.
They all exist already.
but so the hard thing I think for the NFT community is coming up with something that's going to stick and is unique. First in just like a visual concept, right? Yeah. Yeah, and then you have to have good art. I mean, you look at D-Gods, Mad Lads, Pudgies, Seals, right? Like this is good art that they've got.
The best ones seem to have good art.
Traits, you got to have traits going on there. And then I think it really helps to have some sort of charismatic leader of some sort, or leaders, in the community.
Yeah. Despite wanting to be decentralized, you still want some type of central leadership team that is very authentic, transparent, and clear about the vision and the mission of what you're doing. So I do want to thank everyone who's joined us in the live chat. Thanks for joining. If you have any questions at all, we always encourage participation. We also have a free NFT giveaway for the most thought-provoking questions, so feel free to chime in. We're talking with Margaret about crypto exchanges, regulations, NFT market, crypto market more broadly. And so she's joining us on behalf of Cube.Exchange, which is building a really cool new exchange. So maybe let's dive into that a little bit. I'm sure we could talk NFTs all day. But yeah, tell us a little bit about the mission and vision for Cube.Exchange, which we're looking at the website here. And I did a little bit of reading. It seems like they're really trying to handle custody a little bit differently. And they acknowledge, the whole not your keys, not your crypto argument, and trying to keep your funds a little bit more secure and not have as much of the risk that exists on maybe other exchanges. So tell us a little bit about Cube and how, what's the mission? What's the vision?
Sure. our mission is to inspire confidence in crypto again, one trade, one user at a time. It's like our official statement. And we took a while to think about that. And so now what does that mean? So let's talk about centralized exchanges like a Coinbase, for example. Let's look at a Coinbase. There's no Web3 really involved in that except what you're trading. There is, they're not using Web3 technology to innovate how our financial system works. Compare that, to a DYDX, which is a completely decentralized exchange. On the other hand, so you have
that would be like a Uniswap.
Or Uniswap, DYDX. These are decentralized exchanges which are attempting to use fully decentralized. So I think, remember I talked earlier about fringe, frontier, familiar. So getting people to the concept of a fully decentralized with no intermediaries at all supporting you approach is pushing us all the way into what we hope the familiar is, right? So why do we have these centralized exchanges that arose? And so that was, we're going into 2024. We're coming out, knock on wood, of another winter. It's the third winter I've lived through. And so the first winter was right after the ICC, like the trend was ICOs. Everybody was really using tokens to raise money, which was a craze. It started a lot of interest in the industry, but fundamentally, if you're using that token and it's raising money and it doesn't work it has to work within your business model, and you don't structure it correctly, it can destroy your business model. So we learned a lot from that, right?
Yeah.
Next, we come into the next phase, which was the rise of NFTs. And I also say really the rise of crypto exchanges and centralized and decentralized exchanges at the same time. And now we go into another winter. So what have we learned from that? You said not your keys, not your crypto, which was a big saying after this. So we have this tension in our ecosystem. There are people who are fully comfortable with complete self-custody. And that means using a ledger or something hard storage, cold storage, hard wallet, managing your own seed phrase, taking your digital assets on and off, not using any kind of intermediary or custodian, and not going on to centralized exchanges. You have a group of people who are in our ecosystem. That's what they want. That's what they're comfortable with. I think to some extent, for me, that's the vision of where we should be. Right. But unfortunately, the vast majority of people, that is a huge hurdle to enter our system, right? Mm-hmm. You have to learn how to create this. You have to learn how to a seed phrase. You have to learn to think about where to store it. You have to buy something to store it on, all right? You have all of these things. And then you have to learn how to interact to move things on and off of exchanges, decentralized. So it's a lot of technology learning. And even like the most savvy people in the world have this happen. My CEO, Bartosz, tells this story. Yeah, had a ledger in my pocket, went into laundry machine, right? Yeah, didn't have my seed phrase written anywhere because he doesn't do that.
That's the first lesson of a hard wallet. Write that seed phrase immediately.
But and everyone who's been in crypto has stories like this, right? Like I have there's somewhere in my boxes when the 15 times I've moved, there's a box somewhere with a ledger sitting. Like I'm gonna find it before I retire, right? Everybody who's in crypto a while says this. So those are for like the savvy people who are not afraid of technology. So how to Ledger this summer created a product that allowed for recovery, right? And it was like bashed. I think their communication and marketing plan and rolling it out was not well thought out, and that's why it got bashed.
Didn't they also expose a fault, like a?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Basically, the hackers figured out there was a loophole or something.
Yes. Yeah. Hackers will always figure out anything,
right,
but
right.
In that rollout, though, like I go back to what is the message? Why are they doing that? Well, when a company does something like that, it means that they're seeing their revenue flatline. So that means the people who are buying this right now, they've got that audience and they're trying to find the next audience. And the feedback that they're getting, maybe they did market studies, I don't know what they did. The feedback they're getting said recovery is wanted. So we've got that extreme, and we have it within that extreme. I think I would I would guess that happened with Ledger because they were seeing a flat line. So now we've got the other extreme of like a Coinbase sort of person, right? You know, they're not afraid of intermediaries. They're trusting that Coinbase is going to be fine for storing their assets, but it's not dealing with any of the Web2 issues. Also, the Coinbase person probably wants to be comfortable that the people they're dealing with on the exchange, that the crypto is coming from, have been vetted, that it's gone through anti-money laundering, that we're not dealing with a sex tracker or a terrorist. I'm not supporting that, right? All right. So what is Cube? I'd say we call ourselves kind of the bridge. We're the in-between, which is we are a centralized exchange. So our exchange is completely Web2 exchange, just like a Coinbase or a Binance, crypto.com, right? We're Web2 exchange. So your trading experience from when you place an order until it is matched is traditional Web2 exchange. However, the storage of your assets, completely non-custodial. They are stored by you. We create an MPC vault for you. Now, when I say we create it, it's sort of like, it's almost like you have an iPhone, right? Remember when iPhones came out? And then there's the App Store, right? So your iPhone lets you access all these different apps and services that you want. What our MPC wallet does and Vault does, and we don't charge for it because this is part of our philosophy. We are really my CEO Bartosz Lipinski, CTO, which is Larry Wu, and I. We all strongly believe that to get adoption of Web3, to get to the idea that we don't need an intermediary to help us store our digital assets, that we had to do this. So we do not charge for the MPC vault. It's created. The way it works is though you only get to create this if you go through KYC AML, right? So we're combining this. So you know that if you have one and you come to our exchange and you're trading, you're only interacting with other people who have gone through that. So you get that comfort that you like in Coinbase, right? I'm not dealing with a terrorist. You also get the way, and I should say, you should ask me, what is MPC technology?
I was going to go to that. A little bit more detail on the NVC vault, but I'll let you complete.
Yeah, well, MPC stands for Multi-Party Computational Technology. Some people call it multi-sig on steroids. It is not quite multi-sig, but it's a similar concept. MPC technology has been around for a bit, but using it in this way is one of the huge trends that you're going to see in 2024, because it does allow for supported non-custody. What it does with ours, we built ours from zero, so there's no open source in it. We completely built it from zero, from scratch. Wow. It's and that's somewhat the way Bartosz and Larry are as devs. If people know them, they know that they love to build things from scratch. You come to the exchange. And you register with the exchange, right? But now you need your iPhone to actually access that exchange. Think of it that way, right? Like we're like an app that you can. Now you need that iPhone, and we're like, here, have this iPhone for free, right? That's kind of what it is like. Because we also imagine that people from their MPC vaults in the future, you're going to be able to access lots of other services out there. The MPC vault is somewhat like a gift we're giving out to people to say
Web3. It's a gift to Web3.
Well, this is the first time I've said that, so I bet marketing people might hit me on the head. Yeah. But that's actually always how, internally I thought of it. And that's why when we sat around back in March, we thought about, should we charge for this or not? And the three of us were like, nope, no. we'll, where we make money is on the exchange or other services, but this has to be done in order to allow people to start to be able to custody and not custody, have ownership of their digital assets, because you don't custody your own digital assets. I know self-custody is a misnomer. Like, you don't custody the fiat in your wallet, do you? You own it.
Yeah.
You're not a custodian, is a third party.
Interesting way of putting it. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
Self-custody is kind of an oxymoron when you look at it that way.
Yeah, it is. Self-custody, I'm like, no, I already own it. Now I got to custody it for myself? No.
Gotcha.
So I call this a non-custodial solution. So there's no custodian involved. It's your own wallet, but it has support. The MPC technology, so as soon as you're allowed to create this vault, and 3 keys are created. The first key goes to the user. The second key goes to the exchange, and the third key goes to a group of independent validators, and then it's charted out to them. Now, not all keys have the same powers, right? So your key has the most power as the user. It has the key of withdrawal. It has the power of withdrawal and movement of assets. My key as the exchange, I can't move your assets. I can't touch your assets, right? On my own.
Even in the fine print, there's no way at all.
There's no way. No. Okay. There's no way. Like, I'm a lawyer. I'm telling you, there are ways we could have built it, and there's reasons we have it this way. There are ways we could have built it that we could have had like a backdoor and moving it, but nope, we do not have that in there. Awesome. And then the guardian key is more of a validation key. So I'll give you some examples. You have a bunch of assets in your vault. Your vault is what we call the collection of MPC wallets you have that are all on the L1. So they're directly wallets on an L1. Your BTC, your wallet, your Ethereum wallet, right?
Each crypto requires its own MPC. It's not like
every L1.
Each asset. Every L1. Right. That makes sense.
So like if you have a Solana, you'll have just a Solana wallet. And within your Solana wallet, you might have Bonk, Render, Helium. We got Bonk. We have 14 tokens listed right now. We just did our early access launch in end of November. So we've got 14 tokens listed. The first chain that we've been really working with is Solana. I'll do my little Solana. Nice. That's the first chain, but we're chain agnostic, so we'll be going out to other chains as well. But Solana makes sense. My CEO was the head of product for Solana, so it's and from a dev perspective, he knows a lot of people in the space. It helps him know which projects are good and not rugs, right? So it's a good way for us to just get the ones out there that we know are good to have on the exchange. But so now, like, let's say you have some Bonk, some Render, some Jito, some Mobile, right, and some Bitcoin, and you want to take some of that, move it from your MPC vault to somebody, your cousin. You're sending it to your cousin, right? You're gonna send a bunch of Bonk to your cousin, right? Their wallet. How do you do that? You send us a notice that you are withdrawing. We don't approve your withdrawal. We don't say, yes, you can withdraw. We're a service. What we do is we make sure you don't have open orders and you don't have matched but not settled orders, because we can match orders, but settlement occurs. You got multiple chains, settlement occurs at least once every 24 hours is our goal, but you might have these contractual obligations on our exchange. So you might think, oh, I can send, 1,000 Bonk to my cousin, but it turns out you had an open order to sell 100 of them, and you had a matched order where you promised you already sold 200 of them. So we're able to, because everything with you is on chain, right? Your L1, like your wallet is on chain. We're able to just see and go, dude, you don't have enough to transfer it, right? Because you got these contractual obligations. So just let them go. And then we can say, okay, you're clear. So that's what we can do. But what happens if, like, let's say we go into bankruptcy and we can't answer that.
Like an FTX or something.
Well, let's say more like BlockFi.
Right.
Okay. Because I'm talking about a regular bankruptcy, and let's not go into that.
Yeah.
With a lot of different issues, but let's say we go into bankruptcy, and we don't respond to you in 48. A net settlement doesn't occur in 48 hours. That's where you could go to the guardians, right? And the Guardian network has that key, and they can look at the exchange, and what they'll be able to do is just say, hey, we're going to bust all of the match trades. They're busted because they can't settle those without us. It takes the guardians and us to actually do the threshold signature for a settlement to start the settlement movement. But they can bust everything, and that means, I had assets on BlockFi when it went bankrupt, and I have to do one more step before I will get them out. I'll get them out, but it took over 14 months, I think now.
That's wild.
Right?
Yeah.
And then in some countries, it's not clear that they will keep it in the native form. Like, luckily, I'm getting my, digital assets back in the form they were. But
right.
In some countries, they will convert it to fiat at the date of the bankruptcy.
Eesh.
So yeah, so like this is something that we've built to protect. So you'll be able to go to the guardians and say, hey. The guardians will actually make sure they might not do it in 48 hours, but it's not going to be 14 months. It's designed to say these are clearly not custodied assets, they're owned by these people. It's very clear, very segregated. But how does the trading work? All right, so wait, they don't move their assets into an omnibus account with the exchange. It stays in the MPC wallet. All they do is they put an order in. It's matched. When it's matched, that's when we move to Web3. We record it on a subnet. It's called CubeNet, and that subnet is a meta layer that it's run on Solana right now. But it could be run on. We could move it to anything. But and there you're able to see what your match trade is, and on the exchange itself, we reflect that match trade. So if you want to trade more, you can. That match but not settled trade, because settlement has to occur. Now, on a regular centralized exchange, here's how settlement occurs. You're trading. You've got a Coinbase ledger that says you've got this much of this, and this, or a Binance ledger, FTX, as you mentioned, the ledger, right? It says you have this, but all of those assets stay in an omnibus account, custody by the exchange,
right,
until you decide you want to settle. And when you decide you want to settle is when you're withdrawing out.
Yeah.
All right. So when you withdraw out is the point at which you actually get the real reflection. The ledger is just sort of the contractual promise. All right. So what we do is we have the matched contractual promise of settlement recorded on recorded, it's transparent, you can go see it, it's reflected on the exchange dashboard for you, and then within 24 hours it's actually going to be net settled out. The net settled out, we don't take the assets from your wallet, bring it to a big pool, and then net settle out. The net settlement out happens from wallet to wallet directly.
Because every other exchange works off the big pool, right? And when you want to send it out, they're basically just pulling whatever amount they say you have from their big pool and sending it out.
So that's the danger. That's the danger of that.
Right.
Beyond bankruptcy, what's the big danger of that?
Big danger. They can decide when you can't pull it out, and they say, no, sorry, that can't be sent out. No withdrawals right now.
There's that danger. There's the danger that maybe they loaned it out to somebody. Maybe they're doing other things. It's called founder's risk, is what we call it. So you have the danger of founder's risk or exchange risk, just like you do with a bank. Banks don't hold your deposits at 100%
they're investing
level.
your money. They're playing games with it in the background.
Yeah, I mean, a bank run occurs when people have lack of confidence that the bank can allow everyone to withdraw assets, right?
Actually give you your money back. Yeah.
Yeah. So we saw that with Silicon Valley Bank. You had this bank run occurring with them because of that, and that's happened all the time. 2008. So really, Web3 allows us to take that intermediary out And that's what we're doing. And when I look to the future of 10 years from now, this type of non-custodial approach with no intermediaries holding my digital assets is the big revolution. And this is the revolution that will lead to the end of fiat, in my mind, eventually.
Don't say that too loud. Don't say that too loud. That's fascinating, honestly. It sounds like you've really cracked the code on that. So I just want to pick up a couple things about what you mentioned with the multi-party computing wallet or vault. So that MPC vault is kind of the key, right? And it's a innovation you built in-house, you mentioned, but you are making it kind of free. So is there a non-MPC option on Cube? And if you are, can you still trade without having the MPC wallet? And then would you not have to KYC to do that? I'm just curious.
So we are a regulated centralized exchange. So no, you need to go through that. So we're not doing that. And this is what I talk about the ecosystem.
No, that's good. I just wanted to clarify.
No, so you do have to clear that, and so definitely, and our system is designed to interact with the MPC vault and the wallets approach. Awesome. So yes, you do need to take into this system. What's interesting is all of the things in the future, that we can, services that can come in that can interact with this as well in the same way. So I think about it this way, like, okay, people always talk about, those crazy people who stuff fiat into their mattress, right? Because they don't trust the banks, right?
Right.
Well, why do we go to banks? Because we've had, especially with the generations that are in crypto strongly, we've seen those bad experiences. In 2008, if you were 20 years old in college, you learned about what banks were doing. Maybe saw your parents lose their house, maybe their 401k, all of this stuff. So there's this distrust, but we still use banks. We use banks because of the ease of transactions. You can't just keep that fiat in the mattress. Right? Everything's built around these intermediaries, right. Completely. So what Web3 promises is, hey, you can keep your digital assets in a virtual mattress. You don't need that intermediary.
A virtual mattress is much safer than an actual mattress.
It's a lot safer, but it takes out the need for these intermediaries. I was describing this yesterday. People said, how does the settlement work, right? I said, imagine it's like this. You have $1,000 cash at home, right? And you want to buy some oranges. I live in Florida, so I'm thinking about the Howey test, which is about orange groves. But in this example,
nice.
But so you live in Florida, you have $1,000, you want to buy some oranges, you don't want to leave your house, so you go online and you find somebody who's wants to sell some oranges for your fiat, right? But that person is selling 30,000 oranges. You only want a fraction of those oranges, right? So now the settlement is kind of like the going door to door and saying, okay, here, you give me your fiat, here's some oranges. Go to the next door. Here, I have some oranges. You had some apples, different types of tokens. We're trading those. And so net settlement occurs in this digital mattress. I'm taking the metaphor way too far. I always
mixed metaphors. I follow you.
Metaphors of apples and oranges, but the concept really is Web3 allows us to get rid of those intermediaries who basically have lost our trust. You can trust yourself, but those intermediaries we've lost the trust in.
And I mean, the less intermediaries, the better, right? And that's where the word decentralization is important and does come into impact, and also peer-to-peer, right? And being able to have kind of direct peer-to-peer trading. Because when you're looking at kind of the advantages of Web3 and kind of the promise of Web3, it is removing as many intermediaries as possible, whether it's in the art space, whether it's in the music space, whether it's in the finance space, And when we look at fintech, it's not just necessarily removing intermediaries, but actually creating better, more productive, and more accessible ways to send money, and maybe it would reduce the number of intermediaries a little bit. So I do want to acknowledge the chat. Shout out to Idris and K-Bod and Ingrid and Amy. Appreciate you all here. Idris had a great question, which is one of the many questions I had here. And as I said, we have no problem filling up an hour with Web3 talk. I probably won't get to all the questions I have, but Idris got a great question here. So he's wondering, how does Margaret think the approval of the Bitcoin ETF will affect confidence in the crypto market? He's assuming it's going to be approved. And what are some trends that you predict for 2024? So I know we talked a little bit about that ahead of the show. So yeah, ETF, Bitcoin ETF, that's all the rage right now. Apparently it's right around the corner. I'm going to believe it when I see it personally, but how are you feeling about it?
On Friday, there were a large number of amendments filed in the applications that the different funds have put in with the SEC. And that is, for me, a signal that we will see a Bitcoin ETF this coming week. So the process with the SEC when you submit an application for something is they go through a comment and response and discussion with these funds and entities. And so having a large amount of them file amendments on Friday to their filing that are all similar shows me that we're probably going to have not just one, but I would say a couple approved, which I think is also smart. If the SEC is going to do that, don't just let one
You're the
go.
kingmaker. Here you go, sir.
Don't be a kingmaker. Yeah. That would be. They've done that. They did that one time in the past with something they didn't. So I think they've learned from that.
Yeah, I saw one of the guys on YouTube talking about, I think BlackRock's going to be the only one getting it because the SEC's in bed with BlackRock. Everyone else is going to get denied. I was like, oh wow, that would be pretty dramatic.
No, the SEC knows that there is a glaring light on the process here because of the Grayscale case last summer. So if you don't know what happened there, Grayscale challenged the SEC saying they had to review these applications and were not, and they won that case. So that spurred in the fall, lots of movement. Additional ETFs, I think, got filed. I don't know if they were already filed, but I think the additional ETF submissions occurred. And then in December, Gary Gensler, who is the chair of commissioner of the SEC, made some indications in public comments that they were looking at it. They were examining them. So signals from the SEC, the different filings, we will see it. So.
Do you think it's because of the Grayscale thing and basically, the industry continuing to push for clarity? Because it seems like they really just want to drag their feet forever. And I don't know,
Well, I mean, I'm trying to remember when did the twins, the Winklevoss twins, file their one that got rejected? Was that 15?
I couldn't tell you. I do recall hearing something about that. But, yeah.
A Bitcoin ETF, it's been in front of the SEC for a long time, this concept. And so what does it mean? And I've been asked that question a lot. And at first, I really wasn't thinking about it. I was thinking about it in a kind of very narrow short term. What does it mean? Well, we're going to have a lot of these. All right. But now, think about long term what this means. You walk into Bank of America and they say, oh, you got a high balance. You should go talk to our partner, Merrill Lynch, which is what happens when you walk into it. And then Merrill Lynch starts calling you nonstop because they are the investment advisor partner to Bank of America. So, in Bank of America, there's like a little Merrill Lynch office. So they scoot you over there and you sit in front of them and they say, you should invest in this, this, and this. Now there will be, and it's not going to be right away, but it's going to be, and this is a high risk investment, but you are 35 years old, so you should put, and they advise you 10% of your, whatever they advise. I am not advising here at all, but this is what happens. We've all been through it. I can recall when, Latin America, there's special funds focused on Latin America, and it was considered high risk. Emerging technologies funds, you have all of these things, and they are deemed the high risk ones, and you're told put a little bit there. But what happens is that exposes the public to it because you're seeing it through all the communications you get when you sit down annually with that Merrill Lynch advisor, or whatever, Charles Schwab, whoever it is, advisor. You're like, you see it, you get your reports in the mail or now online, but you get that report every month. And so what happens in the past, when you look at like the Latin America and the emerging technology funds, well, all of a sudden you started to see Latin America companies IPOing on the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ. You could have direct securities in them. Emerging technologies, instead of being this like fund, now your advisor starting to say it directly. So this makes it not fringe. This makes it frontier, familiar. This moves it out.
Moves it into the frontier more solidly, for sure.
Yes, and more of these funds. I mean, Fidelity has been in the space for a while, pushing. Like they were early on. I can't remember the name of the guy, Jessup maybe, but early on, Fidelity was looking at putting it in for your IRA, 401k, but you could have this option to invest. So these large institutionals, they're not. Do you think they're going to stop at Bitcoin? Do you think the world, but it's the start.
Yeah, and I know, was it ARK applied for Ethereum as well, right? Ethereum ETF, yes. I believe. I'm actually, in Canada, we've had it for about 2 or 3 years, actually. I'm not sure if you're aware. We've had both Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs. And, I hear a lot of people talking about ETFs basically being the antithesis to what Bitcoin is supposed to be about, right? It's peer-to-peer, it's self-custody, it's independent, basically being your own bank, right? And you're taking that and saying, no, I'm going to actually go to the same traditional, like, institutional players and get Bitcoin through them, and they're going to hold my Bitcoin for me. And when I think that I've made enough, gains, I'm going to sell it and pay them whatever fees, they charge me for holding it. And I totally mostly agree with that. But when looking at something like a pension fund or a locked up retirement fund, right, where you actually can't touch that money no matter what, and some people have however many tens of thousands of dollars in there, you can take 2%, 5% of this money that you otherwise wouldn't be able to pull out and invest into Bitcoin and actually see some gains from Bitcoin in your portfolio. So I think it's a net good thing. And like I said, in Canada, we've had it for a few years and it seems to be pretty good. And like you said, it is definitely still seen as high risk and super volatile and all that. But I do think it is moving, from frontier into familiarity for sure.
I think you hit on a key point, which is, you're talking about there's those in the ecosystem who want things a certain way. Like, we don't want a Bitcoin ETF because that's not the way we're supposed to do it, right? I really identify that there are a lot of different participants in the ecosystem, and people have different drivers. I would say at my heart, at my core, I would call myself a blockchain purist. I really believe in the technology. I really believe that before I die, I will see a global digital currency. And I want to do everything I can to support and advance that. But if I don't recognize that my viewpoints might be way over here in the ecosystem spectrum, right?
Right.
And that to get people over there, what's the best way to do it?
It's probably a variety.
What's the best way to do it? So that's sort of, so themes for 2024, for me, one, I call it the bridge year, right? We're a bridge. We're a bridge that allows players to be between the blockchain purist, fully decentralized, not your keys, not your crypto approach, right? And it's just Bitcoin ETF, Coinbase, all the same stuff. They're not using Web3 at all, right? I think 2024, you're going to see a bridge approach occurring in the ecosystem. And we're going to use the word you hate, which is mass adoption. I want to know why you hate that word. Why do you hate? You said that.
So basically, from the art kind of community, creator community side of it, I guess it's more of the diehards and the metaverse and things like that. But there's this idea that mass adoption is a net good thing. But ultimately, we also know that mass adoption only comes when essentially the kind of traditional corporate entities have a big piece of the pie, and that's generally when mass adoption actually happens. So the argument is like, do we really want mass adoption, or do we want to just keep pushing the culture and let it kind of grow naturally and not have, you know, some massive multi-billion dollar players come in and basically define the game, right? That's the narrative anyway.
Yeah. And that's, my mother was an artist, as you know. You come to my house, you saw my mother's art. And so that I think definitely has to be something that artists keep in mind. The man destroys art, right? We got to be careful of the man, and that's what my mom used to say. My mom used to always worry about the man, and by that she meant the big institutional commercialization. She made a lot of money off of, you know, some commercialized stuff, in ads and different things, and it saddened her, you know, when she saw it. It never made her happy. But that's an artist's soul, I think.
Right. Yeah.
So she was much happier, you know, making a one-off thing that, you know, sat in someone's house and made them smile.
Right.
And so
I dig it.
Yeah. So I think mass adoption, though, is a different thing in sort of the fintech space of this, or in the enterprise space of it. Because mass adoption is you know, how do we get to that full disruption? And I really don't think of it as much as disruption. Disruption sounds so negative to me, right? For me, it
sounds like innovation to me.
Well, you know, disruption is what I would have said when I was like, you know, the 20-year-old punk going to CBGBs, right, in New York, and in the mosh pit. But I think of it as evolution. We are going through an evolution of our financial system worldwide, and that evolution it's grounded in Web 1, where we've gone through with Web 1 and 2, right? We had the evolution of communication that occurred, and that's internet and telecom communication, right? Then we have Web 2, and this is the evolution of just overall fulfillment and what people can get in terms of goods and services. But none of these things broke down borders. The communication part of the technology revolution that my generation really kind of lived through and in awe was our hope that it would break down these borders. But then we saw Tiananmen Square happen. And I can tell you, like, so many people, when that happened, the next day I had like 20 tech friends at my house, and we were just crying because we had thought that all of the communication, the internet, the ISPs, all of it would bring about a huge change, and it just couldn't. Now we have Web3, and the change that this can bring about globally is control of money, and control of money impacts governments. And so this technology, this is like what we're seeing in the combination of all these technologies is going to be written about in 25 years, 50 years, the same way the automobile is, and how it impacted global society.
Yep. No, I love it. And that's what we are focused on the podcast. You know, I think to your other point you mentioned earlier about kind of the narrative and being able to talk in your red cup, solo cup kind of breakdown for your friends. And that's similar kind of to what we're trying to do on this show. And I think with some of the groups that I'm involved with when it comes to really just being active in the community and showing the power of the technology and how it is changing things. You know, we have people from all different corners of the world that are talking about selling their art on the blockchain, and people from all around the world are buying their art, right, and supporting them directly through peer-to-peer technology. And so, like you said, is that Web3 breaking down of borders? To your point about Tiananmen Square and the idea that, you know, we thought when cameras were everywhere and everyone sees everything that's happening, autocrats aren't going to just get away with murder and crazy like oppression, right? But unfortunately, you know, humans keep being crazy. But I do think that Web3, to your point, is going to be an unstoppable force, right? When you look at the idea that finance can no longer kind of be strangleheld by the government, which was the mission of Satoshi overall, right? It was in the wake of the 2008 collapse and the idea that basically government and regulators created this mess and actually devalued the currency, but also incentivized bad loans, incentivized all kinds of like shady practices that essentially kind of brought down America's housing industry, right? So really, really great points. Thank you, Margaret. And thank you, Idris, for the awesome question. Really good stuff here. He was also asking about your thoughts on AI, which is another big technology that is disruptive. And how do you think AI specifically is going to impact Web3 and crypto if it's not already?
Yeah. So right now I think we're in the fear stage of AI, and you're seeing a lot of legal cases out there. There's a fear, from an artist perspective, like we were talking about earlier, there's a fear of what it's going to do to art. But I talk to a lot of artists, and for them, it's another tool in their mind. But there is a lot of fear of like, will this disrupt writers, artists, etc. AI is like, I always say, bad information in, bad information out, right? AI is just what feeds it. ChatGPT is a great tool for lawyers as long as you don't like file a legal brief on it like that guy did in New York, right?
Yeah, you better review that.
But it is a great tool for lawyers because so many lawyers will go there and say, oh, geez, I'm drafting non-disclosure agreement, and I need to put in there a non-solicitation of employees. I don't have that in my form. ChatGPT, draft me one, because you know what it looks like, and then it drafts it. You're like, oh, no, I need this, and you can, and then you're like, oh, oof, dude. Well, it basically is Google on steroids, because normally what you do, it's in some ways. And now I would say if you're like a first or second year lawyer, you should be cautious about that. I got a couple gray hairs here, so I know if ChatGPT is drafting me a good thing or not, like as a start. Right. It's great for checklists, like create me a checklist of all of the requirements to go get a crypto license in Canada. Right. Well, no, it's not called a crypto license. It's you need an MSP, you need a securities exchange license. Canada considered asset-backed securities to asset-backed stablecoins to be securities now. So it basically goes out, grabs all that web research that you start with. But you just start with that as a lawyer. You then go and look at the sources and things. So it's a good tool. It's a better Google tool. When Google came out, people had to worry about it. When AI replaces decisions of humans, that's the overall concern. But generative AI can be a great tool for people. People ask me, are we doing anything with generative AI in the crypto exchange? And if you're smart and raising money for any type of business out there right now, you have somewhere in your little slide deck, we are considering generative AI, because it's like the buzz thing, right?
Yeah, it shows you being ahead of the curve, or at least on the curve, right?
We are considering that, and real world assets, and like whatever the buzzwords of the day are. We have, like, what I'll say for us right now is that we have so much going on, but we are a technology focused crypto exchange. So that means like what we're doing is everything that we do is designed, like our UI, our UX is all designed to think about the users, what makes it a better experience for them. So yes, we got that on our nice. Path, and we're definitely going to think about it.
And overall, it's definitely impacting the industry, just like every other industry. And it's funny you mentioned the writers, because I actually come from a communications background, and it was like, I just felt like I left the corp comm world, the corporate communications world at the right time, because that, like, I am pretty sure they're going to be cutting down corp comm like for 80%. Like, we can just do half of the work like through ChatGPT. All we need is a final set of eyes to just like, tinker with it, review, finalize the articles.
Well, you can tell. So Bartosz, my CEO, sometimes he jokes. He's like, ChatGPT tends to write like you, Margaret. I'm like, it does tend to write like lawyers, because garbage in, garbage out. Lots of lawyers use it, right? So like we will throw, a lot of times I'll write an email, cover email or something. Like maybe it's like I'm sending out something to our shareholders and it has like 22 steps they need to take. And I just say, I'm going to throw to ChatGPT. Can you make this shorter and better, right? Well, now ChatGPT has my long version. That was the garbage in, right? It gives me maybe, I don't know what it gives me, but it gives me something. Sometimes it's helpful. It gives me some thoughts, right? Yeah. So lawyers have embraced it. Marketing comms have embraced it. So that means its voice is becoming like lawyers and marketers right now. Yeah. Like if you look at the development of it. But can you tell, like when you get an email from somebody, and sometimes I get it, and I can tell they had ChatGPT write this, and they didn't even think about it, because especially when it repeats, because they're always repetitive, right? Like the first paragraph, then they repeat the same concept 3 paragraphs down. Right. So I kind of giggle when I get that. I'm like, if you're going to use it, it's just a tool, but it shouldn't be you, because
exactly,
because it's so obvious.
Make it more your own, make it more concise, put a little bit of personal touch on it.
Yeah,
that's why
it's a tool.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I think you had another question. You had at the beginning. What was the?
Well, just looking at what you predict for the rest of 2024 when it comes to the trends.
24. Yeah. So 24, I think it's going to be a bridge year, which means that the successful companies are going to be the ones that are thinking about how do we bridge from completely intermediary kind of to completely decentralized. What do we do to bring out those bridges? I think there's a huge community focus as well. Like right now we are focused on Solana for like this, like our focus right now is like, hey, let's get all of the great Solana tokens that are out there listed on our exchange that are already out there listed. Let's start thinking about what's in the pipeline. We listed in just like under 3 weeks, we're at 14 tokens on our exchange, which is, when you think about that, that's like 3 to 4 tokens a week. It's a lot of work. My team is not sleeping.
That's pretty epic.
No one in the company is sleeping to get this done.
Startup life,
Yeah. So I think a focus on community, and then we're gonna integrate more blockchains. We're going to do the same thing. Focus on the devs. The devs are the ones who kept at it, right?
Yeah.
Because this is a hard thing. I think we had a lot of devs leave Web3 during the winter. That always happens. They got to work.
Makes sense. Yeah, exactly. You got to pay the bills for sure.
Yeah. Bartosz, I think I mentioned he was at Solana and the head of product, and Bartosz and Jordan Prince, who was there as well, they came up with this concept of the hacker house. And the hacker house was born out of COVID, right? So he saw that devs were getting isolated. Devs already, as engineers, tend to be introverted, head down coders. I have to physically go over and tap Larry on the shoulder, like in the office, and be like, I need 5 minutes, because he would much rather be doing coding than anything else. He has to do other stuff, and he knows that, but that's why the tap happens, right? But also, how does a dev get better? And that's where Bartosz's idea of the hacker house came out, which is, let's get them all together. Let's make it a conference that's about the devs, where they all are in, a huge space with their computers, and they are building, and then they're interacting with each other, And so I think we're really lucky that we had this concept that has been taken on by a lot of other chains of hacker houses, of a focus on the dev community conference. You go to Consensus or Token 2049 or whatever, the people there are you and me.
They've slowly started to tie in hackathons, basically. I've seen that. But that's really cool. So you're saying Bartosz and Jordan kind of led that hacker house, or like the narrative of like creating events for devs?
No, it was born with the two of them talking about this problem for devs, beautiful. And like getting them out. And so how do you do, there's people call it brainstorming or play storming. How do you, like, if you're a dev and you're just in your own project, like you need that interaction with the greater community, and not just online. So this was the concept of like, they do it online. So I think that got born during COVID, post COVID, right? And it's continued, and I think that whole concept of a hacker house, which has expanded to, I think almost every chain thing does stuff like this now. That's been a really good, important thing for our dev community, and keeping our dev community building during the winter. And so I see 2024 trend for us to think about, which is, remember the devs. There's, the last cycle, NFTs, marketing, all of that was really important. But let's remember, if we need to keep pushing forward this Web3 technology, and we need to do things that focuses on those devs and helping them get out those products. So I hope that's a trend that we see as we come out of the winter. Overall, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Wow, that's 100%. Can't disagree with that. And being able to talk to a lot of devs who have been kind of just with their heads down, working through the winter, they're working on some innovative solutions. And to that other word you mentioned, disruption, it's going to continue. I don't think fintech or blockchain is slowing down really, and it looks like it might be a year of acceleration if I were to give my prediction. Any thoughts around the halvening and just general kind of crypto market 2024? Obviously, Bitcoin ETF, assuming if the narrative holds true, it gets approved, institutional money kind of floods in because they have to have actual assets to back it, right? In their own sovereign wallets, I assume, like a BlackRock, a JP Morgan, whatever. Like they have to buy a bunch of Bitcoin if they're going to sell ETFs, right?
Yeah, so remember, buying Bitcoin rises all ships, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's going to rise all ships. So, Bitcoin maxis will tell you otherwise, but yes, they have to go somewhere to buy that Bitcoin. So the institutional retail investors will be able to buy the interest in the fund, right? But market makers and institutionals are the ones who are going to be in there buying that. That is going to drive activity on exchanges. That's going to drive the exchanges to grow as well, and that's also going to drive devs and builders and projects to think about different things we can do to accelerate this. 100%. So also it will give to the rise, like you said. We see ARC, Kathy Wood, ETH. So Bitcoin, we know is not secure in the U.S. ETH, we're pretty sure it's not. Question. Chairman Gensler has made that cloudy. The Hinman speech back in the day was good. Ripple case has helped us there, but the halvening has always preceded a bull market as well. So look at it historically. You start. People were asking me this back in June. What did I predict back in June? I said, in around November, the fall. In before happening, we've always started to see signs of a bull market coming, and it's up and down and up and down. So I predict that in November, December, we would see that. I was right on that one, but I could just as easily been wrong. Yeah. There could have been something, and that's the hard thing. There's a lot of things that can impact this that are world events that we don't know. Inflation. There could be, different things that happen with governments. We just don't know.
War, geopolitical stuff,
Yeah. So, but what I see going on globally in terms of other countries and regulation is they're engaging, they're creating frameworks. Australia's put out a consensus. We have MiCA in the EU, which by the end of this year is going to be in adoption. Hong Kong regulations, Canada. Regulate new frameworks. We have all this happening. Yes, there is a stall in the U.S., and I really think that stall is just a highly politicized stall happening, which is a shame. The Bitcoin ETF is going to be a movement. Where we end up with political parties in the U.S. will make a difference as well. So, but when I look overall globally at all the signs I'm seeing, because I can't just look at the U.S. as the signal, I look globally. I spent a lot of time traveling to different countries, talking to different regulators. When it was 2017 and I did that, it was explaining what blockchain was and digital assets. Now they're very aware of what it is. They're thinking about how they should regulate it. Regulators, they have their mission globally. It's pretty much to say, what can I do to make sure that investors are protected? What can I make sure that the financial markets in my country are going to be stable, right? Overall.
And how do we get some tax revenue from it, of course.
Yeah, and then overall, just kind of consumer protection. Like, hey, let's make sure that we're not creating something that's going to be lots of illicit activity and fraud, and mom and pop kind of lose their house, or romance fraud, those sorts of things. So, so one of the trends I see for 2024 is those global regulators are starting to pull ahead of the pack. And there's a fight to see, you see it in the EU, which country will be the leader, as there, there's MiCA, which is the EU overall framework, but each country is going to have their mini MiCA, which country will win. You see France, Ireland fighting over it. You see the Eastern Bloc countries getting in there, Germany, so who's gonna be the country?
Yeah. Shout out to Karen Shidlow. She was one of our guests we had earlier. She's from the EU. I believe she was joining us from Netherlands. And she was talking about the CBDC, and it seems EU is really going full bore ahead with the CBDC. How do you feel about the CBDC? And I mean, obviously there's privacy concerns, but what I really find odd about it is the way they kind of frame it as, obviously it is a digital currency technically, but they really try to frame it as a replacement of crypto, or something that's symbiosis with crypto, or will help with crypto adoption. But it does seem to be the antithesis of crypto, and it does seem to have all of the same kind of inflationary, manipulative problems that typical fiat has. Any thoughts on CBDCs?
Well, I think you see CBDCs.
And that's central bank digital currencies for any listeners.
Yeah, central bank. So the concept is that you have a centralized bank, which is the country's bank, right? The bank of the country, which we don't really have that concept in the U.S. so much. But a lot of countries, you have the bank that is run by the government. Most countries have something like that, and so that within that bank there will be assets that back a digital currency, and so it becomes the replacement for their fiat, essentially, for that country. Think about it that way. So Bahamas, you have the sand dollar, El Salvador, the chivo, right? So you have these different ones that are out there. So for countries that have instability in their fiat historically, or you got to have questions about it. For country, I think where it could be good is for countries that have not gotten a lot of advancement in e-money. So this could help with their e-money advancement. For example, if you look at Finland and Norway, I think the countries have done studies on it, and they've basically determined that we don't really need this because we have this covered with all of our advancements and innovations in e-money within the country.
Digital movement is already real. Right?
Yeah. But it is helpful. But on the other hand, look at a country like Haiti, where digital money doesn't move around so much. So that's where used properly, a central bank digital currency could work. This is obviously a competitor to asset-backed stablecoins. The Circles, the Tethers out there, we're seeing the rise of a lot more asset-backed stablecoins coming out of different countries. So I think that will be a trend. No, I think
how do you feel about that? You think that's a good thing? More stable coins? Because I guess I look at this whole narrative, right? Of we see BRICS, we see the idea that the U.S. dollar is losing influence, and as the kind of global currency hedge, as it were. But when you look at the crypto space, very much it does seem to be essentially backed by the US dollar, right? Whether it's USDC, USDT, and this whole narrative that's now coming up about whether stable coins should be viewed as securities, which to me seems really silly. Maybe you can explain that. Maybe you can explain that a little bit more for us. But yeah, it does seem to be that it's a good thing, at least geopolitically. I'm not American, but I would think, if you are wanting to be on the side of the Western order versus the BRICS, if you look at the world that way, it does seem like having the US dollar as kind of the main stable coin of crypto is generally a good thing for the West and America. Is that a fair reading? What do you think?
Well, let's start with USDT, right? Which is Tether's asset-backed stablecoin. Crypto exchanges would not exist without that. It was the settlement mechanism that allowed the rise of the crypto exchanges because Bitcoin couldn't be used for that. Bitcoin was volatile, still is volatile. Users need something that can be stable. Where I think I see asset-backed stable coins going is sort of what we see happening in the EU, which is regulation that is very clear on what has to back that stable coin. So, for example, cash, but what about short-term debt? Cash equivalent. So you see cash and cash equivalents a lot. What's a cash equivalent? A cash equivalent under most accounting principles would be something that within 6 months, or less is redeemable. So, it's a T-bill is a cash equivalent. But okay, now how much of cash equivalents should you have backed? Does it need to be for it to be equal to $1, and not depeg? Do you need to be over collateralized? If you look at what Tether, Circle, etc., they're all over collateralizing now because of this concern that has come out.
But Tether wasn't, right? I think Circle's always been taking that route, whereas Tether was not as asset backed, right? At a point.
Tether, remember, Tether's the first one entering the space,
right.
really.
And they did algorithm, didn't they, as opposed to asset backed?
No, they didn't do algo. They did an algo. What happened with Tether is they were asset backed fully. They had and Tether and Bitfinex was related to them, kind of like an affiliated company, not full. They weren't owned by each other. They were both in this bank called Crypto Capital, and Crypto Capital was a sham bank. They started to move their stuff out of that bank, and Tether got most of their stuff out. Bitfinex didn't. Tether did a loan to Bitfinex. It's called a mirror loan. So they both had accounts at this new bank, and basically they moved some stuff at Crypto Capital. They moved some stuff over here. It's called a mirror loan. The problem is it took too long and became a longer term loan. So now Tether's not 100% backed.
Right.
Tether went to the U.S. Attorney General in New York, who was looking into this bank, this sham bank, and said, help us with this. Bitfinex, I think, actually went to them. I can't remember which one it was. Look into this. Help us with this. Instead, they turned around and said, you're saying you are backed by cash and cash equivalents. They changed their disclosure. It used to be it was backed by cash. When they did this loan, they said cash equivalents. But technically, a cash equivalent is a 6-month loan. I think they were intending it to be a 6-month loan at the beginning. It became a longer loan. Right. But it became a longer loan because of a shady bank, and they went to the government to help with it, and the AG said, no, we're going to sue you instead.
Right. And
so Tether, but I'm not sitting here being like a proponent or a defender of Tether, but I think they get a lot of hard knocks. And what we have to remember is they were at the fringe stage.
Yeah.
They do this well, and it's fine for us to look back and Monday morning quarterback on all this stuff and say it should be 100%. It should be this. They are now. I think Circle learned that they needed to be diversified. They had a lot of their assets were in Silicon Valley Bank, and when that had the run, that meant there was a run on Circle, and we saw.
I think Circle did depeg for the first time after that too, right?
I will actually say, technically, I hate when people say they depeg. Tether and Circle have actually never depegged. Technically, depegging, what they did is their share price went down on exchanges. That's not a depegging. A depegging is when you can't meet your redemption calls. So none of them have ever failed to meet their redemption calls. When people have come, they have given the assets. Right. So none of these stablecoins have ever depegged. And so I want to put that out there. It was a fear of depegging that occurred.
Well,
and
that caused clarification.
Yes. So that's a crypto exchange kind of knowledge. So it's, there was a run. there were redemptions. All of it, like I have watched these redemptions. Tether met their redemptions. Circle met their redemptions. I think Circle learned. My guess is Circle learned because I saw them go out and diversify where they have their assets held, because you have to have that situation.
Right.
Just like the U.S. government, right?
You're feeling pretty good about both USDT and USDC into the future. How do you feel about this conversation about them being securities? And I guess my concern is like
securities.
Yeah,
They're
clearly not, right? And it just seems so silly. It's just like they have a very clear function. They have a very clear function, and they're not promising anybody any future value, right? Like, so how are they? Why is that even a conversation? I don't understand.
Do you buy USDT as a investment? Or USDC?
Nobody does.
No, because it's not going to go like there are people who will short it and do other things, but that people do that with currency as well.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So it is a currency.
Right.
It should, to the extent it needs to be regulated, it should be regulated in that way, not as a security. I think a lot of that just comes from the need for us to educate more the regulaters about it.
Ignorant politicians, essentially.
Yes, and they peg it, right? The depegging, right? Like it's forecasting a depegging, therefore the price goes down. Yes, it's listed on the exchange, but it's really listed on these exchanges in a pairing, so that you can go and sell like Bitcoin to USDC, and then I can use my USDC to buy, in spot trading to go buy, Bonk. And now I can, move to USDT, and I can go and buy Ethereum. So it is a settlement mechanism.
Exactly. Settlement mechanism, stable coin. And on the question of like different countries starting up stable coins, do you think that kind of like muddies things, or is it kind of an inevitability?
I think it's an inevitability. I think one of the trends I think you'll see in stable coins is private companies in countries creating stable coins that are supported by the government. And that's probably because those governments really don't want to allow in a Circle, a Tether in their mind. So I think you're going to see that rise in, a China, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like, so because there's that desire to still control.
And like extremely restrictive markets, essentially.
Yes. Yeah. But that's not a bad thing, because that also is going to allowing that to happen. Like if you look at in Hong Kong, you have First Digital, which has an asset-backed stablecoin. And they have a lot of experience with treasury management for different companies. It's a great company. Take a look at them. So I find them really interesting because they're working on. They have an asset-backed stablecoin. They've done a bunch of quarterly reports, and they're getting in that space. And I think that's really good, because that's in Hong Kong, which Hong Kong may not easily open up to Circle or Tether. And this is good for Hong Kong, and it's good for China, and it's good for overall Southeast Asia as well.
Is that then a yen stablecoin essentially, or what would be the currency then that they're creating?
No, it's pegged to US dollar.
Oh, it is still US dollar. Okay. Yeah. So that's why it's interesting that is the chosen metric upon which to have a reliable currency. And frankly, I don't know how reliable the yen is, and I don't think the Chinese government wants anyone creating a digital yen other than themselves, right? So that would probably invite more problems trying to create a stable. Stable.
No, I don't think. Wait, yen is Japan. What is China's?
I thought the China was yen. I don't know.
I forget what it's called, and I was just in Hong Kong the other day. See, I forget names, and I forget names of currencies.
You're good.
Don't even get me on tokens. I forget token names, and then I get yelled at by people. What's your token called again?
All good.
I know Bonk, because Bonk is such a fun name, and like Render, I love Render. Render is such a great name for a token too.
I like the vision of Render, and I'm glad they went over to Solana, because I think they were initially either just layer 2 on Ethereum, and it sounds like Solana is going to work out better for them.
Well, Render is such a great utility. When I look at it, I really like them. I mean, Helium. Like there's some good names for tokens like that. They're doing some really interesting things. So Yeah, well, we're just going on a roll with these tokens, and I get to know them a lot. I am not endorsing investing in any tokens. I'm not giving
no financial advice here. We're just talking
no
technology.
Financial advice, no legal advice,
Yeah.
no art advice. I'm giving you some cooking advice to make you better.
It's been amazing. I feel like I could pick your brain all day. I want to respect your time. I know we're hitting the 90-minute mark here. I am curious, and Idris mentioned this as well. Looking at the metaverse, this show we always like to talk about the metaverse. We've got our own kind of plots in the Voxels metaverse, as well as a couple other projects we're working on. But does Cube have any thoughts towards the metaverse as an exchange? Do you see any opportunities? Whether it's from a marketing perspective or from a community perspective. Any thoughts on the metaverse at all, or any experience yourself in the metaverse?
So, what's being done in the metaverse in lots of different areas right now is so interesting. You've got the gaming metaverses. You have like the educational metaverses that are occurring, fashion metaverses. So meta work, right? And really, when I look at metaverses, I just say it's a way of allowing people to interact more and more. So many people are so negative on the concept of metaverses because they're like, oh, it's isolating people more and more. I'm like, no, it's connecting them more and more. Exactly. It's just another form of connection. It doesn't mean that they're not going to go out to like a yoga class in live, but maybe they can't do a yoga class live right now, so they're going to go into the metaverse yoga class. Maybe they can't make it to New York for New York Fashion Week, but boy, it would be really cool to see a fashion show in the metaverse and try on some clothes. Maybe I don't have the ability to swim with dolphins because I live in British Columbia. Are there dolphins in British Columbia? I don't know, but it's cold. I'm assuming there's not. Yeah. But wow,
so. There might be. I don't know.
I can go to Dolphin World Metaverse, and I can swim with. So think about it from a trader's perspective. What kind of metaverse might they want? So yes, that's always something that we are a crypto exchange that is built by devs, right? But devs with financial background, like Bartosz, JP Morgan, Citadel, before he went to Solana. I mean, he built TradFi. In fact, our Web 2 build is actually built to optimize for traders, which is the first Web 2 centralized exchange truly to do that. Most of them were not built by people with that kind of experience. So our latency is 40 times faster than Binance. We're 40 times faster. Nice. And a lot of people say that. I will tell you, when I sit and talk about how we built it, why we built it, and then you go and experience and you talk to the market makers, they say yes. So they're bringing all of that to a trading experience. Larry was at DRW building option software, right? So my background is, got years and years of TradFi stuff into fintech. So we bring all that to this, and so but all of us come towards the crypto exchange with a concept of what technologies can we be using to make a better user experience? So metaverse is, metaverse, AI, all the things. Yes, they're in the playlist, but hey, we're just in the first stages.
Yeah, no doubt. No, that's exciting though, and I'm glad that you see the vision there and the potential to build out in the metaverse. And like you say, it can become a home for your community, for your brand, right? And people from anywhere in the world can jump in there and connect with your brand. That alone is worth a lot, I think. And a lot of people are kind of overthinking what the metaverse and the digital space kind of offers. Similarly, I was curious, looking at NFTs and kind of the opportunities with NFTs, but also, around the security question we were talking about, obviously comes with some potential complications as well. Is Cube looking at an NFT marketplace or looking at kind of getting into that side of the crypto trading space as well?
Yeah. So naturally, I mean, Bartosz was like one of the lead dreamers behind Solana's NFT play, right? So he's the head of product for it. So most people identify him strongly with everything to do with the tech and NFTs. And we get asked that question a lot. The plays that we have seen on exchanges and marketplaces that combine NFTs and non-NFTs, we'll just call them, right? it seems to be a different user approach. Like there's some overlap, and overall. So we are seeing, you're seeing Kraken get into this now. They've made they're making a big push towards that. I was on a space the other day, and I was, what we do is we listen to the users. Like people are saying, why are you always on Twitter Spaces lurking?
Market
if I'm
research.
in the audience, feel free to pull me up. I'm happy to give my opinion on anything that you can probably tell. But the reason I'm lurking is because I want to hear what people want, right? So why am I listening to NFT talks? I'm listening to what they want, and so what they want versus what the traders who are in the non-NFT space wants. You don't see the same drives there.
Yeah. And you look at something like Base with Coinbase, and kind of they've gone obviously full bore, even going back to like late 2021, which I think has had mixed results. Like personally, as a avid NFT collector, I'm not very interested in collecting NFTs on Base. I have a couple, but generally not a huge.
Are you going to go to like Magic Eden? Or are you going to go to Krome?
Yeah. Well, that's just it. I would go to a Magic Eden before then, or now they have exchange.art. Shout out to exchange.art. It's a beautiful,
exchange.art. Love
Solana marketplace. Yeah, a lot of amazing art over there. So yeah, I mean, object.com for Tezos, and obviously Ethereum's got some good marketplaces.
What I talk about, like our MPC vault is your iPhone.
Right.
And Cube.Exchange is our first app service.
So easily you could add a new NFT marketplace service, and it could recognize the MPC.
Could it be the same? I don't know.
Yeah. You could add
again, remember, we're in our first stage here. We just did our early access launch in November. These are the things we talk about, but I really always think of us as we're giving you an iPhone, and our first app is this crypto exchange, and wow, we have no idea what else is going to come.
But the innovation is there, and the technology speaks for itself. And I really love this idea of non-custodial solutions. And I do hope Cube is kind of leading the way, and that this is going to be something that basically becomes kind of expected and demanded of people in the crypto space. But to your other point, you might be a little bit further along on the frontier side of things, and I think that a Coinbase and a crypto.com are really just, I don't know. They don't seem too worried about the conversation between, holding your own assets in a separate wallet, and they just kind of want to keep continuing with the way they're doing things. What? So non-custodial is the way to go. I'm very interested. Yeah.
When you say they're not that worried, I agree with you. And here's what I will say. Blockbuster wasn't worried about Netflix.
There you go. Exactly.
Just remember that. And there's always going to be the first movers, right, who are out there in the space. When first movers get comfortable, you don't see them again. MySpace, remember MySpace? Does anybody remember?
Right. Yeah, got a little too comfortable.
Yeah, so it's Blockbuster had an opportunity to buy Netflix. I don't know if you've ever read that.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, read the there's a book out there on it, and it's really interesting reading. So BlackBerry believes that everybody was wanted that experience of typing, and that this touch would never happen.
Right.
So first mover BlackBerry, it's I think what's so hard for any company is always not sitting around and thinking we're comfortable, we've got this.
Yeah. Definitely seems to be, especially once you're successful, right? Once you've hit that level of, certain revenue, and you've got everything seems like it's humming along, I think that's when you get more complacent, right?
It is. And so, I think one important thing for a company is you got to make sure every single person in the company knows their purpose. What is their purpose? Is it also what they want their purpose to be? Okay.
Yeah.
So and when you have that, then they care about what they're doing, but it's hard to keep that as companies grow bigger and bigger. It's hard to keep that kind of culture and mentality.
Okay. So in your case with Cube, it looks like the technology is going to be helping with making sure that that's kind of always happening, and trying to kind of find new use cases for this MPC vault, essentially, which could have a myriad of awesome applications in the blockchain space, right?
Yeah, well, hiring people who understand what their purpose is when I say their purpose, their individual purpose, like you need to know what is your purpose for being here. And if you're spending 10 to 20 hours a day on something, it better be your purpose for being here, right? Why do I spend, and I spend, like, people know this, about 20 hours a day, 7 days a week on this. Why do I do that and smile? Because my purpose, really, I think my purpose right now for the next 5-10 years is to try to see if we can get to that place that I've been talking about.
That's amazing.
With technology. My purpose is always saying technology can bring about so many good things in society. Let's get there.
That's what's up. That could be the theme of our podcast too, specifically Web3 technology. But in general, as somebody who's also in the fintech and payment space in my day job, I definitely also lean heavily into that narrative that technology and innovation in general is a good thing, and that we should just keep pushing forward. And as long as we're doing it for the right reasons, with the right intentions, being genuine, only good things are going to come out of that. For sure.
That's why our mission is, we're going back to you asking our mission, inspiring confidence in crypto. Like everything we do is designed around that.
That's amazing.
Which is really inspiring confidence in crypto the technology. Like that's what we want to do.
Amazing. Last big question here, jurisdiction wise, right? So looking at the Coinbase, looking at the crypto.com, who for whatever reason, although they've obviously had their own tangles with the regulators, seem to be able to function in America full scale, and obviously Coinbase went public, right? So how do you view the jurisdictional question? And I believe Cube is currently not operating in America. Do you see that as kind of like a hurdle? Just how are you tackling that, and what's the situation now for Cube when it comes to that? So
everything that we're doing is designed to go everywhere eventually. The question is, where do you go first? Right. So spending time with regulators who are building their framework, countries that are building their framework, being part of that, having those conversations with them, we can do that in a lot of countries. But in the US right now, it's difficult to do. That doesn't mean that what we're doing is not going to be designed to come into the US. It's this, I've got 27 years of being a securities lawyer, a crypto, commodities, security, all the stuff that goes into this model. So everything that we are building, we're building with that in mind of where we believe the US is going. So the Bitcoin ETFs definitely are something that are going to spur things, as we talked about earlier. But our initial go-to-market plan, it is a focus on the countries where the governments are putting out these consensuses. You have the ability to go in and talk with them about your model. They're regulated. We're not going to, places that are highly unregulated.
Yeah, we're not that clarity, right?
I'm not going to a place where I can plop $1 million in a bank account at a central bank and get a license in 5 minutes. Okay, which you can do. We're going to places where these are countries that are having crypto adoption. They have a history of good regulators, and the regulators are starting to think about this now. And we're building out our model in a very compliant way.
I love it. That's amazing. Baby steps, but also big steps, frankly. Sounds like, especially on the dev side, you've really you got the hard work kind of completed, it seems, but also always evolving, right? How are you feeling about Canada specifically? Just curious.
I love Canada.
How accessible is it for me up here?
Well, right now, we have we got our MSB license in Canada on December 20th.
Hey, this is the money. Nice.
That's the first step towards Canada.
That's it.
In Canada, they adopted or announced last December, December 22. They came out with their framework, and it's developed over 23. That's when also the guidance has been coming out about stablecoins that are asset-backed being securities.
We're still hoping that doesn't become law. Whatever.
Yeah. So our 24 plan is for Canada, because I love Canada. There's just lots of OGs in Canada.
Ethereum was born up here, right? Come on.
Ethereum was born, Toronto.
That's it.
So I think so I know, actually I can say this for 2024. for like I have the application in working on the draft for it to be the securities exchange license that I would need to get there because of the Canada framework. So I hope as soon as we are able to flip the switch there, I will shoot you a DM.
That's exciting. That's exciting. Well, like I said, I'm in the fintech space in my day job, so I'd love to chat with you about that, and I might have some insights on the Canadian market I could lend as well, and maybe even contacts. So yeah, we'll definitely. I'd love to chat about that. That's really exciting, and I look forward to being able to use it whenever that does become finalized. Really exciting. Thank you so much, Margaret, for this time, and thank you to everyone in the chat who came through with some good questions and just watching and hopefully learning a lot from these insights. I am looking to have a regulatory conversation on LinkedIn, actually, if not this month, next month, and I would love to have you there because you definitely are
that would be
quite
fun.
An expert on the topic, and it would be looking at the global landscape, but also specifically in the States with hopefully there'll be some big news coming out in the next month about the regulations in the States. So yeah, if you're interested in that, we'd love to have you back. And last question, what's next for yourself and Cube? It sounds like you're 20 hours a day, 7 days a week on Cube, so you probably got a lot of things around the corner. But what are you most looking forward to?
Well, right now, a huge push on getting as many tokens out and listed on the exchange, getting feedback from our users. We constantly are listening, seeing what we're doing wrong, seeing what we can do better. I mean, that's the focus for this month. In terms of what's coming this year, stay tuned. I am not yet allowed to reveal things,
all
but we are planners. The old expression, measure twice, cut once.
Familiar.
So we do a lot of that. We do a lot of thinking, brainstorming, and there's a lot coming for Cube.
That's exciting. That's exciting. Definitely wish you all the best, and we will definitely reconnect. And I look forward to hearing about what you're working on in Canada specifically. And yeah, again, thank you to all the listeners. We'll be back next week with another episode of Web3 Warriors. And until then, thank you, Margaret. Thank you, everyone. We'll meet you all in the Metaverse. Take care. Peace out.